Hey, here we are at the Lonestar Sports Show right here on the Lonestar Sports Network. Today's show is brought to you by FastSmallSports.com. Get it in like we get it in. This particular segment is brought to you by Harlem Hotels. Harlem Hotel, you can put your money where you sleep. Go take a look at HarlemHotels.com. You can hear more about that at the break. Today is Basketball Thursday right here in the heart of Texas, the DFW area, North Texas, Oak Cliff, Texas. Any way you want to look at it is all things sports, all things Texas. When we get the few shows that we are fully committed to basketball on Basketball Thursday. You're gonna get all basketball tonight. Yeah, we're in the middle of football right before the big LSU Alabama game takes place in our Bayou backyard down in Baton Rouge. But right now it's plenty going on in basketball. Lots going on. Basketball season's kicked off. All the scrimmages are over with. Things are moving along. So it will be the round ball report that'll be going on here on a real strong regular on Thursdays all the way through April to the Final Four and state championships, and then we'll go back into our regular routine. But right now here on Basketball Thursday, we have a lot of things going on. Yeah, we're excited. I'll go ahead and squeeze a little Dallas Cowboy. We're excited about Monday night. Stephen A. Smith, the number one Cowboy hater in the country, will be coming out to Arlington, out at Arlington Live, or Texas Live as they call it, where they'll be hosting a talk show out there. And I think he'll be a little outnumbered. Really, really excited about what Amari Cooper can bring to the Cowboys, and some of the things that we looked at on the last show. If you didn't hear that, go back and take a look at it on YouTube Live. If you're on YouTube Live, hit share. If you're on Periscope, retweet. But we're right here at the Lone Star Sports Show. Commission on College Basketball. A little over, I guess, roughly 13 months ago, we were large numbers of allegations were brought out. Charges were brought, all based on a disclosure of an FBI investigation on a fraudulent money scheme situation that was going on in some investment deals, and we found ourselves leaking over into college basketball. And they opened up a can of worms, and they left one of our top NBA sports agents, and Andy Miller, and that moved over to Dawkins, who has now been found convicted on bribery charges and wire fraud and things of this nature throughout the trials. But they put together a commission. I was really skeptical about it in the beginning. I actually see a little more mission, a little bit more that was accomplished. Not that I necessarily agree with it, but I do see the rhyme and reason to what Condoleezza Rice and her commission were able. I think Grant Hill was on that commission, the AD at the University of Southern California, a former AD there. Not the AD, because I think Lynn Swan is the AD, but a former administrative and athletic administrator from the University of Southern Cal was included in that process, and it was one other former NBA player and college player that was included there, but those are the ones that jump out at me. But everybody calls it the Condoleezza Rice Commission because she was the leader of it and has been extremely successful as in her profession and has aspirations of going into NBA or collegiate athletic administration, so front office type things of that nature. Has aspirations. I've actually confirmed that from multiple media sources and articles of her aspirations of that. But she actually, when it all goes down, she will go down in history of changing what we've always known. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next segment or two are going to be geared toward a large percentage of what has transpired, or what took place in the situation, and how it has leaked into grassroots basketball, high school basketball. Obviously, collegiate basketball gets all their players and does all their recruiting and evaluation through the vehicle of high school and grassroots basketball. And that's, if you follow the trials, you know that the Boeing father got up and disclosed his relationships through colleges and through grassroots and through the company of Adidas, and there's been a whole lot of finger pointing that's going on and way things have gone on. But I'll say this up front: do I feel like this changes what was affecting roughly 1% at tops of what was going on and what was wrong with college basketball and the corruption, if we'll call it, in college basketball, which, by the way, I think exists just as strongly in football. For some reason or other, has never been mentioned or talked about.
Right.
But it is what it is at the end of the day. But one of the main things, I guess, that bother me, and we'll adjust and we'll go along, you really don't change it, is that the so-called third party was considered to be the non-scholastic grassroots summer. They like to use the word AAU, which is technically an obsolete word because the players that they're concerned about don't play AAU basketball.
Right.
The little bitty kids play AAU basketball now, but that's a term that has hung on and really stuck through all of the change and way that things have evolved over the last 10 to 15 years in grassroots basketball. But summer ball, later on in the show, in the second half of the show, we're going to be bringing on Marlon Lowe, who runs Texas Pro, a prominent grassroots program, multiple NBA players, and also runs a podcast called Summer Ball.
Yeah, the Summer Pod.
Summer Pod, right, that's what it's called, but all geared toward pure basketball show, and where they talk about a lot of the different issues, mostly linking to what's going on in the grassroots world and how that transcends and moves on to the next levels. With Marlon, I've known for roughly 17, 18 years. Are going to be coming in maybe a second or third time on the show. Second time, I think, no, for sure.
Second time this year.
This year? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, 2018. So he makes it out about twice. So we have to let him know he's a 2-year guy. I mean, 2-time-a-year guy. But it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on it, and we have a chance to listen in the second hour. I think starting at 7:15, those last 4 segments, we'll look at the experiences that we've had, and we'll swap some ideas and talk about what we think. But back to the issue of the Commission on College Basketball, they basically disclosed the nature of the interaction and how all of these different levels have their inappropriate, if we'll call them, benefits that change hands in the interest of pursuit of recruits and pursuit of clients and pursuit of agents involved. And you've heard me say that it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Mm-hmm. And, so because of that, I mean, you're going to get this. I mean, this goes on not only just in sports, but across the board. It goes on with people. You see it in political arenas all the time where certain political officials will make themselves available to corporate entities soliciting government contracts. These things happen. It's been going on since the beginning of time.
Would you consider it like a black market?
Yeah, black market. I mean, I guess the definition of a black market is any market that's not operated in the so-called day, in the light market, the open market where it's advertised. It goes on behind the scenes and operates in that form of fashion. The whole political arena that we operate in, the way we elect all our elected officials, operates in somewhat of a black market campaign contribution type environment. So, when you look at it, and I don't know if Lady Life would agree with me on where I'm coming from, but when you look at a capitalistic society, economy, or market that we operate in here in the United States, then all things are going to, goods and services and relationships are going to always be traded and dealt with it for the purpose of advancing their own economic and business agendas. And it's just hard to get around that. I don't think you will ever change that. It's not going. You're not going to change it. And that's one of the interesting, somewhat sad. And you say, what do I mean when I say sad? That's what's sad about this whole Commission on College Basketball deal. You're dealing with roughly 1,400 Division I scholarships a year, with another 1,000 scholarships at the junior college and Division II and Division III and NAIA levels. It bumps on up to probably closer to 3,000, 4,000 scholarships. Here, actually, in the state of Texas, where we're all things sports, all things Texas, where I call myself an expert based on what I do, I would venture to say that with everything that's going on and has gone on in these decisions, the masses of the kids have been hurt. The masses of the kids' opportunities have been limited. You can't get around that. I see, the NCAA's agenda is to remove the third party. They have a term that they like to use all the time, but the other person in the neighborhood, the person that impacted and involved, that you haven't removed that with a $1 million, multi-million-dollar athlete. That's going to exist. Anytime a household or a community or a particular clique or group have an opportunity to move forward their economic process, they're going to solicit, manage that process. It's not going to change. The Commission on College Basketball did nothing to fix or change that. What they did do is limit it. So that's one of the things I'll say. We're going to talk later in the show about what are some of the mechanisms that have been put in place to create this type of situation. But you got us right here. When we going flying solo tonight, Lonestar Sports Show right here on the Lonestar Sports Network. Lady Life, Under Your Money, the Prince, and yours truly, Alan Branch, giving it to you like this. Got two guests coming on. We'll come back in the next hour. We're going to be visiting more on this situation, and we have Spanky Lewis. We also have Marlon Lowe. So all basketball on Basketball Thursday. Back in 180 seconds. Today's show was brought to you by FastSmallSports.com. This particular segment was brought to you by HardhamHotels.com. Put your money where you sleep. Back in 180 seconds.
Hardham Hotels. Make money where you and millions of others spend money. Hardham Hotels Investment and Development Group's primary disciplines include hotel acquisitions, hotel development, hotel project management, as well as asset and partnership management. At Hardham Hotels, we invest in upscale focused service and extended stay hotel properties, mainly in Texas and other major urban markets. We are hotel owners, developers, investors, and asset managers persistent in our pursuit of successful ventures and passionate about our products. We provide nationally branded investment opportunities, including Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt hotel franchises. Hardham Hotels strategically places the right product in the right location for the right customer. Get started with us today. Visit us online at www.hardhamhotels.com. Hardham Hotels, put your money where you sleep.
Back for segment 2 right here at the Lone Star Sports Show on the Lone Star Sports Network. Today's show is brought to you by FastSmallSports.com. The Admiral, former NBA Hall of Famer.
David Robinson.
Yeah, David Robinson actually opened up with the opening statement. I thought he really did a good job of kind of laying the whole landscape out. But one of the most interesting things to me is that somehow, and this is the kind of twisted part about this whole deal, somehow they came out of this situation feeling that these events, non-scholastic events, and in the gym and where basketball takes place was somehow going to has the influence, or this is where the contact, or this is where the relationships are developed. And there couldn't be anything farther from the truth that these relationships are not developed. These relationships are developed during the high school season. A lot of these relationships are long-time relationships that start at 14, 15 years old. They start to mentor and support these kids, get involved. I'm talking about the high-level prospects. This is pretty much what goes along in sports, period. That's where the word coach comes from, that has such a wide-spanning, non-field, non-court related nature about the word coach. It's a intimate term that's used. This basically is related to where a young man or young lady refers to someone as coach as someone that they trust and they interact with, and often is some form of a mentor that goes along. And a lot of times when we hear the word, we just think of the actual coaching act in a contest or preparation for a contest. But in the sports community, coach goes a long way, especially in basketball. And basketball is huge. It's almost like walking through the grocery store and saying mom or dad, and everybody in the aisle turns around. You walk into a gym and say coach, and everybody looks around. So I mean, that's the nature. I think one thing that was really kind of belittled or not really looked at closely, they did not really examine the culture of how the basketball world operates and functions and what drives it, and how people see sports as a vehicle to a better life, whether it's through education, to economic, financial betterment of their life, relationships, maturing, growing up. All these things come into the play of it. And the farthest thing from the truth is the real fact that you're looking at a situation that you're going to alter because of when they play and where they play and who's in charge of where they play. I think from an economic standpoint, I think there's some platforms out there that are considering doing some things to probably counter the commission's recommendation. But the thing is that this is not where it goes on. If Big Eddie is 6'10" and plays over at Booker T. Washington High School and is over there, Big Eddie is going to be trained and coached and developed by people in his developing years, and those people are going to stay in that kid's life. And that's what a lot of what people don't understand. I think it was an ideal opportunity. One of the things that they recommended, and we'll see how that goes, is that the NCAA step in and run their own events. Well, that only tells me two things. Them recommending that the NCAA step in and run their own events, and this would alleviate some of this, tells me that they really don't understand, or was the agenda to take the events and the economic nature of what goes on the events away from the general grassroots community. We were dealing with 5 non-scholastic, as they're called, events, is where when kids get majority of their evaluation. Many kids would never get seen at their high school. And so now you've taken that opportunity away from them, and you interjected these scholastic or non-scholastic events, or either NCAA run non-scholastic events. That seems to be the new platform. We'll talk more about that as we go along throughout the process. But when you look at those things and how they are set up and how they're run and how they operate, you haven't changed anything. You just changed who signs them up, who rolls the ball out, who puts the schedule up is what you've done. And that has nothing to do with the corruption on college basketball. And we know right here running Texas grassroots basketball that the interaction and us knowing the players and the relationships have nothing to do with it. We see the relationships when they show up at the gym. We see the same relationships at the high school gym. We see the same relationships at pickup basketball and open gym. The relationships of these so-called third party or the people they feel like that are responsible for all the corruption that goes on, I think they're really just pointing the finger in the wrong direction when they really look at it. If you really want to understand it, you look at the NBA Top 100 camp where they go about trying to manage that situation and deal with that the way it is. And you just really scratch your head about some of the things that the NCAA does. It either says, okay, they don't understand what they're dealing with, or they have multiple agendas. Now, just like the NCAA is saying they're trying to take the third party out, well, they just passed a rule roughly about 18 months, about 2 years ago, where now the third party can go on all the visits with the kid. Not just the parents anymore. Go figure that one out. So they're going to fly. The universities, Division I member institutions, can fly the third party in to help them get them to college basketball, but the third parties can't be a part of the event running or part of their life or other time. How do you think you're going to separate that in the United States of America? Try that in a communist country or something where you really dictate people's daily lives and who they interact with. I mean, it's just
where do you think the finger should be pointed?
That's a great question, honey. I mean, you get a Pulitzer Prize or whatever media journalists deal they have. Where should the finger be pointed? And I mean, in 5 minutes, I think it'd probably take me 5 minutes to answer that question. Mm-hmm. First of all, it always has to be pointed. Two things that controls people's behavior is one thing is accountability, and the other thing is education. Though people act or do according to what they know, and they respond and act based on the accountability that they have. When accountability is put into a place and responsibility, you and I both know when running NCAA certified events, the accountability is being placed on the event operator and on the NCAA Division I recruiting coach. Mm-hmm. But then in turn, the grassroots summer coach has very little accountability in the situation other than to show up and pay his money and play and behave
Make
reasonable.
Sure he's not playing X amount of
and they've just stiffened that process of trying to manage that. That's been a rule for Lord knows how long, probably 6, 7, 8 years. Mm-hmm. That you couldn't see, but they now are starting to do more to check to monitor that process. And but the thing is that how do you change it? You change it through accountability and change it through education. And we do a poor job, and I've been involved in NCAA. I've had the NCAA in speaking on eligibility and things and recruiting things of this nature at some of my camps. And representatives from the NCAA, they've done a good job, but you can't cure a 55-gallon drum of problems with 1 teaspoon of cure. It's just going to take. Mm-hmm. It's not one speech is not that potent. Yeah. It's like the eligibility thing and educating parents and student athletes and high school administrators about eligibility. 2 emails are not going to fix it. There's too many other overwhelming things going on that you have to stay in front of them. But back to a point I wanted to make, and it may be a little cynical or whatever. I mean, I don't think it's inappropriate. Sometimes I often wonder if the NCAA wants to have more control of the economic process of what's going on. They feel like that the drawing card could make a little sense on Condoleezza Rice's deal, but it still doesn't add up. It could make sense to someone that doesn't understand. Well, if we stop the event operators from making so much money at these events, then they won't be so drawn into the process. Absolutely the craziest thing in the world. These same guys are paying to get in a high school game to watch their guy. They're picking this guy up, taking this guy out to eat, making sure this guy has school clothes, making sure this goes on, making sure that goes on. and managing that process and nurturing and cultivating the relationship and massaging it into, telling this kid a lot of times some things that aren't really true, but it's the best thing that they have, and so, I think that's where you have to go into it, but trying to figure out who's running the event and when they're running the event and how the event is going on, that doesn't change it. It doesn't change the situation that's gonna happen, and the craziest part to me about a lot of this is that nobody other than the actual people that were indicted, and 3 of them have been convicted now, no one is really feeling the blunt of the Commission on College Basketball as we draw to a close with this segment. No one is really feeling the blunt of it but the grassroots community.
Yeah.
They're the ones, yeah. That's the people that are really suffering. And of the grassroots community, 99% of them have nothing to do with what's going on. It's like if, we decided it was a war on drugs, and now we're going to go from house to house all through the neighborhood. Everybody's got to open the house up and let the drug dogs in. We're going to search your house once a month or at random. We have a problem with drugs in the United States of America, but, it's not in 99% of the households that are in your neighborhood. So we're right here at the Lone Star Sports Show, breaking it all down, looking at it. We're going to move back into time a little bit. We're going to have Spanky Lewis on in the next segment, talking about the Robert Hughes Hall of Fame showcase that will be taking place during the busy weekend of what all will be going on Thanksgiving weekend, the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. We also have the Hoops Fest that will be going on over 10th year for the Hoop Fest over at Duncanville High School. So there will be a lot of activity, a lot of people in town. By the way, there you go. Thanksgiving weekend, Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. Before the main prospects will be playing, they'll be playing in high schools, and there'll be a lot of people in town. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Back here at the Lone Star Sports Show on the Lone Star Sports Network. We're going to chop it up and look at it a little bit more. Lady Life, Honor Your Money, and yours truly, Alan Branch. Hey, you're all rolling back in here to the Lone Star Sports Show right here on the Lone Star Sports Network, giving it to you like it is. All things sports, all things Texas, right here in the heart of North Texas, right here in Oak Cliff. Giving a good look at it. You got Lady Life and Uneven Money. Today's show is brought to you by FastSmallSports.com. This particular segment is brought to you by the Robert Hughes Hall of Fame Showcase that'll be taking place Thanksgiving weekend right there in Fort Worth ISD. Be a real busy weekend, but tonight we are blessed with the opportunity of having Coach Spanky Lewis right here giving it to us and going to give us an account. Got a whole lot of history showing up. If you look at the picture that's up on your screens right now, you can see the Spanky was right after Naismith discovered the game. He wanted to show them how to play it fast. There's the whole deal. Coach, I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of what it is that we're doing here. Learned a few things about you, been knowing of you for a long time, and got to know you a little bit more intimately in the last few weeks and involved in trying to assist and support some of the things that y'all were doing at the Robert Hughes Hall of Fame showcase there in Fort Worth.
Well, thank you very much, Alan.
Yeah, so that's the whole deal. But, you know, you grew up playing in what's called a PVIL, and unfortunately, for whatever the reason, probably the majority of my listeners don't even know what the PVIL is. And PV stands for Prairie View. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. That's it.
Interscholastic League. This was before integration. In the days prior to my mother's 91 years old, and she can tell you the stories. I don't know if y'all ever saw the movie Debate, The Great Debaters or whatever it was. They were traveling on that road. That was the road they traveled from East Texas to go over to Prairie View for all of their interscholastic competition. In basketball, a lot of people don't realize interscholastic competition composed of sports and also things in music and debate and drama/theater. And but right now we got one of the great PVIL, probably borderline PVIL Hall of Famer. Did y'all at I Am Terrell, which was Dunbar, I Am Terrell, there were two others. I know in here in Dallas you had it with PVIL. You would have had Prairie View, Lincoln, and Booker T would have been competing in the PVIL. Is that about right, Coach?
Yeah, exactly. Madison was a part of that.
Madison also, right?
That
James
conglomeration too.
Right there,
exactly.
right there on Forest Avenue, the same Madison that you
exactly.
know about, right?
Yeah, and Lincoln was part of it also.
Yeah, I knew Lincoln would have been. I knew Lincoln and Booker T. I actually grew up with, just like I grew up. We're going to talk about Coach Hughes. There was another older coach named Raymond Holly, who was a football and track and field guy. His youngest son and I grew up playing together and playing against each other some too. And so I got to just get my history just from being around older people, so I have some sense of familiarity. And if you think about it, every year the UIL does some form, I say every year, the majority of years, the UIL does some form of recognition of PVIL greats. There used to be a guy that used to be one of my assistants, Robert Brown, headed up the
exactly.
You know Robert Brown in Houston, right? Yeah, he was my assistant coach for 2 years there, and a great man. Taught me a lot about the PVIL once again. You know, and my challenge to the young people always is it's very difficult to understand what you're looking at, and if you don't understand where it came from, and that's important. So I just appreciate you taking your time. High school class of 1966 there, but when you look at where things are now, how has high school basketball changed in your opinion? I'm not talking about summer ball. I'm just talking about just what you see and what you thought, what you were thinking in 1963, 64, about the time I was being born.
Exactly.
And how you all were seeing it as opportunity, competition. Just take a couple of minutes and tell me what you thought when you were 13, 14, 15 years old, and how you saw the game then, and then when you look at what young people are looking at now versus how they see the game now. Give me a little few more thoughts on that.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It is a great privilege to be here and to be able to give you a little bit of insight of where, I came from. First and foremost, I lived was in the Butler Housing Authority, and it was considered as the projects, and it was the projects. But the way of living was just so unique because respect was so important. You know, and nowadays you go, you say something to a kid, and the next thing you know, he got his whole family coming up to defend what he said, wrong or right. But back then, you know, it was about the adults. They would give the adults pretty much the upper hand to get an understanding about exactly what the problem was. And one of my greatest dream in high school was to go to I M Terrell. I M Terrell was pretty much, I know if you remember that movie Cooley High, years back, that was our Cooley High. You know, I M Terrell, and pretty much everybody wanted to go there. And I'm very much sure it'll never be repeated again. And the teaching and the concern for the kids was very important. You know, you learn. They made sure you learn because they totally had the upper hand. Parents would collaborate with the teachers, and teachers basically won. And as I said, you know, my whole thing was I M Terrell. And when I was at George Washington Carver Elementary School, my grade school was right there by I M Terrell, and I stayed right up on the hill from it. And like I said, that was my greatest dream, to go to school there. But my seventh grade year, my sixth grade year, getting ready to go to I M Terrell Junior High, because I M Terrell was a junior high and a high school. My whole thing was trying to get there and be an athlete. You know, I'm a pretty short guy. Still got my high school figure, and no weight hardly. But the real
fact,
essence
I
of
can
the whole
verify
thing,
that for everybody.
okay. But the essence of the whole thing was I came in contact with Coach Hughes my sixth grade year, and he would allow me and my next door neighbor and two other young guys to come in and watch their practice. And I had never seen anything like that. You know, I thought that was just, you know, one of the greatest things that I'd seen. And he would allow us to come in every day and watch. And then one day, out of nowhere, he just asked, do you guys, apparently you like basketball? You know, and we said, yes, sir. That was the response. And he said, well, can you play? And yes, sir, we can play. He said, no, you can't play. He said, well, I'm going to tell you one thing. If you want to learn how to play and you want people to know who you are, you need to come to I M Terrell and play for me. He said, you got any kids? He said, you got any kids over there with any size? And I said, yeah, we got one guy I know. You know, he's a very good friend of mine. We grew up together and everything. His name was Ollie Ledbetter. And he was about 6'6", but that's if he stood up straight. But he had the longest arms you ever want to see. And you remember the way Connie Hawkins used to control the ball with one hand?
That's right.
He had all that together. He could shoot with one hand.
That was at the
George McGinnis.
Like George McGinnis. And a lot of people have no idea. Y'all just need to go Google Connie Hawkins, who I used to go and pay $1.75 to see. He was in the ABA right down at the Dallas Convention Center, right? And tremendous player, offensive. Ben Wallace before Ben Wallace was Ben Wallace, and but some of you guys might not even know who Ben Wallace is. Well, that's concerned.
Oh yeah, we're calling names that probably not very many youngsters really know. Right. But anyway, to go back into the conversation about Coach, you know, I started recruiting for him right around that time. And the guy that I mentioned to him about, he wore a size 13, 14 when he was in the seventh grade. And Coach was very famous for giving out nicknames. So he called him Ski because he said his feet was like a pair of skis. And the unique part of the whole concept of this was that Coach would allow us to come, watch everything that goes on. Then when we got to junior high school, he allowed us to play for the junior high and then come out and work with the high school. So consequently, unknowingly, he had a plan for Ski and myself, because he showed us so much and gave us so much information, took us everywhere, which was beautiful. And it was all in the plan. So by the time we got to be in high school, by the time we got to be a senior, it was pretty much guaranteed that we were going to win a state championship by the way he nurtured us.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the way I met him, and the things that were so amazing about Coach. Coach was a very, very hard worker. I thought maybe his attitude was just like that, being regimented. Everything had to be in line. Everything had to be on time. Everything had to be centered totally properly. And I didn't know, but he was a military man. And as my little high school career proceeded, by the time I was a junior, we won a state championship. And Coach was probably the most amazing person that I ever met, because one thing he did say, he said, if we lose, we're going to lose very few. But one thing we're going to do, we're going to outwork everybody. And we played 365 days a year, twice a day. And that is the truth. That is the honest truth, man. And I mean, the conditioning was so
regimented,
solid.
Hey, y'all!
Everything was over this.
Y'all are getting it right here at the Lone Star Sports Show. We're about to take a quick commercial break. This particular segment was brought to you by Harlem Hotels, HarlemHotels.com. Go take a look and listen where you can see how you can put your money with sleep. We've got Spanky Lewis. We come back in. We're going to chime in more on Robert Hughes and take a look and talk about his philosophies and why is it so important for us to embrace the Hall of Famer that we have right here in our community. How important is this event to the Fort Worth community, to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and to the great state of Texas? We're back with more Spanky Lewis right here on the Lone Star Sports Show, Lone Star Sports Network. You got Lady Life, Under Your Money, yours truly, Alan Branch, and our special guest, Spanky Lewis, I Am Terrell, PVIL state champion, and many other accolades to go along with that. We'll be back in 180 seconds with more of your Lone Star Sports Show. Hey, here we are rolling back into the Lone Star Sports Show right here. Well, got down to segment 4 now, getting it all done. We do it in 12-minute pops around this camp. The Lone Star Sports Show right here on the Lone Star Sports Network. Today's show is brought to you by FastSmallSports.com. Go take a look at FastSmallSports.com so you can see how they are leading basketball into the 21st century through the vehicle of technology. And technology is definitely a part of what's going on these days on and off the court. And so we have to live with. We get a couple more segments of Spanky Lewis here. We're now kind of diving a little bit more into the Robert Hughes HOF Hall of Fame Classic. Man won 1,333 basketball games. We've done the math all around our office, and I had Coach Tommy Brackle, who's about to reach 600 wins, and we calculated the number of wins that he would have to get at his age from now to then, and he'll be almost as old as coaching, and still have to win 25 games a year to do that. Coach, how did y'all win that? Spanky, how did y'all win all them games? That's what I want to know. How many games? How many of them 1,333 did Spanky Lewis have anything to do with?
Okay, we didn't do freshman basketball.
Mm-hmm.
When you came to high school, because we had junior high school.
Yeah, that's correct.
So when you went to high school, you were a sophomore instead of a freshman.
So you had
and in my 3 years in calculating, we lost 4 games.
4 games in 3 years. And,
4 games in 3 years.
How many games did you win in 3 years?
Oh man, everything that was put in front of us.
Okay.
With the exception of those 4.
With the exception of those 4. So y'all were winning, what, about 30 games a season?
Pretty much so.
Okay.
That's just about right.
So you won right at 100 basketball games in 3 years as a high school varsity player under Robert Hughes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the key to the whole thing is we were so focused on basketball, I was totally unconscious of all of that until I left, and that was years after I left.
Really, that's an interesting point. As I was one of the ways we were talking earlier about how things have changed, and
absolutely.
And I think kids still have some of the aspirations to do it. The environment just doesn't nurture that as much anymore.
Exactly.
You see it a little bit with your Yates High School, and you see different situations, and all favor and all being fair too. Also, we just live in a different world now than you guys.
Absolutely. And one of the keys to the whole thing, Alan, is you have a different set of parents now. Your grandmothers, some of them are probably 37, 38 years old. Mm-hmm. So their taste and their experience in life is rather rare. Mm-hmm. So they're learning along with the kids, mm-hmm. And you spoke on the win and losses. I had made a speech probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And when I started looking at the stats, rehashing what's going on and his total accomplishments, the thing that really, and I mentioned that during the speech that I made, the thing that really, really got me totally and completely, not the 1,333 wins, but the 247 losses. Okay. That was totally incredible, and that's exactly what I looked at. And then I had to start thinking like you, man, we didn't hardly lose anything when I was in high school. And with us being the PVIL, I kind of assumed that maybe in this day and time, and since it was all black then, black on black, most of the people probably thought that I Am Terrell played the Mexican 5 and under federales.
Who were y'all's top rivalries during that time? What was going on at Houston Wheatley High School at that time?
Wheatley was right then. Wheatley was still on their surge. Okay. That was before Jackie Carr.
Mm-hmm. Right,
and
I've heard about that.
Exactly, and they were really pretty much the tops in Texas as far as high school is concerned.
Okay,
and that's who we lost to my last year in high school.
Okay, the 66 championship. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and the most intense rivalry that we had was basically against Dunbar,
okay,
which is unbelievable.
Right there in
it was Roosevelt High School, your old alma mater.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, we would have some knockdown, drag out games with them. You know, and it was nip and tuck, very hostile, but it was great competitive basketball. So you know, and very physical.
My high school coach, Ellis Davis, was I know Raymond Holly was the football coach and track coach there at that time, and I know Ernest James was there as a track and field coach. Was Ellis Davis the basketball coach then? That's the only basketball coach. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, he was.
Only one we ever knew. You know,
yeah, he was the head basketball coach, and I remember in 1966, my last year, he was the coach of the year. So he coached the
All-Star
North South All-Star game. He coached the guys from North Texas, and he invited me to play.
Oh yeah, you told me.
And I really had a ball with Ellis Davis, and I have great admiration and great love for him, you know. And I think he had the same thing for me because he was very special, and for him to choose me really meant a lot.
No, I mean, don't want to venture off on a tangent with Coach Davis, but the one thing I always appreciated about Coach Davis was he always made you aware of your future. And that's one of the biggest things I could say about him. As much time as I spent around him, and I can remember he coached me as a 9th or 10th grader. He was the quarterback's coach at that time, and he would always in the quiet of when we were watching the defense or not. I wasn't in practice or whatever. We were standing and talking. He would talk a lot about preparation for college. And do you understand? You know,
that's right.
Spent a lot of time on those things, and I had a lot of good coaches there, Rabbit Thomas and all those guys. But Ellis Davis provided a big perspective, a big way of looking at things. He always did those things. But
one thing about but one thing about Coach Davis was that you know, he was a little bit ahead of the game. He had a great IQ for the game, and as Coach Hughes, and I think Coach was a little bit more on a little bit higher level, you know, because of the fact, you know, Coach played with the Harlem Globetrotters. His exposure was quite different. And he played with the Boston Celtics. But two things that we did in high school, we played help defense. Whereas back in the PBIL days, schools would try to outscore each other. You know, first one to 100. But,
that's where the Jackie Carr got all that from, huh?
Exactly. And that's that old Negro League basketball.
Right. Yeah.
But as they say, Davis emphasized a lot of different little measures of understanding about the game and toughness. You know, that's why we had so much trouble with Roosevelt. You know, and they had a good squad, and they were athletes all over the place, but they were very well coached and very fine tuned. That's why I respected him so much, because he was one of the few high IQ coaches. He and Coach Hughes.
Well, people don't realize that Coach Davis was a chemistry teacher too. Yeah. A chemistry and biology science teacher. He taught chemistry and biology, to my recollection. So he had a high level of intelligence as how he approached things. Period.
You could tell. You could tell.
Yeah, you know, having spent so much time, I worked for him as a lifeguard and grew up with his sons, and you know all of that. So I mean, those are the kind of people that influence. But we're talking about the having a Hall of Famer is what I want to talk about in this segment.
Absolutely.
I think people don't really understand the value of a Hall of Famer, and what we have here in the next 3 or 4 minutes in this segment is that I think to the best of my knowledge, there are only 2 basketball Hall of Famers in the coaching side of things that reside here in the state of Texas. One was the lady that was down at Cleburne, Texas, down there that was extremely successful, and she even talked about her interaction and the influence that Coach Hughes had on her. And then we have Coach Hughes as our other Hall of Famer here. But that was one of the proudest moments in my career, is to be at the Final Four and standing in the deal there. And when Coach Hughes walked by, and Bob, who was one of my classmates and freshmen in college together, to see he and his sister escorting Coach Hughes up, and then Coach Hughes standing out there with Tracy McGrady and Bill Self, as we know, the head coach of Kansas,
Kansas, right? Right.
And being inducted into the Hall of Fame. You know,
right.
And I think that's taken for granted because people don't understand the magnitude of having that. You know, we like to talk about 1333. That's how he got there. And it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody to catch him. But do you think that this Robert Hughes, and we've got about 2 minutes to answer this question, do you think that Robert Hughes will have name in the Hall of Fame showcase that could take place, could potentially bring a level of awareness and understanding of how big of a mecca DFW basketball actually is, and the fact that we do have Hall of Famers right here amidst us like that?
Right. Well, my position on that is that when you really look at how Coach has adapted from different eras, that was totally amazing. Because coming from the Jim Crow era to today's era, you had to be a godsend. See, people don't reach that top of that mountain like that, and especially from this location, which is Texas, and Texas always and pretty much still is considered as a basketball state. But Coach Hughes set the standard, and the bar is probably so high you would probably have to start at 18 and finish at 90 to attain what he has attained. And it's not a fluke. It's not a joke, because he played every game from 57 to 2004. He played every game himself right there on that sideline. I've never seen that much intensity, and I've never seen that type of a motivator. And he's just, to me, not the winningest high school coach. He's the winningest coach of all times. Pros, college, you name it, he's on the top of it.
Top of the hill.
Yeah.
Right there.
Exactly.
We come back, we're going to introduce what the Robert Hughes Hall of Fame showcase and what that will look like in the grand scheme of things on the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving here this month of November. That is November the 1st, just roughly about 24 days away. We'll be going in that process to talk about some teams. You'll hear more about that as soon as Lone. Follow us on social media at TX Boys Basketball. You can see a lot about what's going on with that particular event. Like I say, that's going to be a busy weekend. That weekend after Thanksgiving here in the state of Texas, just get right there on Interstate 20 and you'll be able to see all the basketball you want to see between the two events that'll be going on that weekend. Right here at the Lone Star Sports Show, we got Spanky Lewis, one of the former players of Coach Robert Hughes, Hall of Fame Robert Hughes. Back in 180 seconds with more of the Lone Star Sports Show here on the Lone Star Sports Network. Here we are back here in segment 5 of the Lone Star Sports Show right here on the Lone Star Sports Network. Giving it to you like it is. All things sports, all things Texas Today show is brought to you by FastMallSports.com.